Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate. Thank you all for joining us for this amazing deck tech video. This is what I would call Set 3 Palpatine Aggression First Pass deck tech video. Yes, it's a long name, but I'm telling you folks, our passion has been Red Palp since Set 1. I still love Red Palp, and I think we got a lot of new tools to kind of bring out. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to break down my old list. I'm going to break down the new list that I put together, talk about some of the cards, why we've included them, talk about what's still relevant, and then kind of talk about, is this something that can be a part of the meta now that Boba's gone? If you have not yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, do whatever you can to make sure you follow us for more of our regular weekly podcasts. Now, here is the old list that we have been playing around with, that we've been playing essentially set 1. We updated a little bit for set 2. There's a few things that we probably got to cut out of here that aren't as impactful, that weren't as impactful as we thought they would be. But this is what our set 2 Palp Red deck was. Again, I'll throw a link in the description for kind of the discussion that we had. We had a whole episode we did on Red Palp because that's how much we love Red Palp. And it is the specific reason, if you follow this channel, you could be a part of a giveaway next episode right here on Planning Phase Syndicate. Now, this deck originally had a little bit more Sentinel. We switched around some of the Sentinels. We've gone for a little bit more of what I would call a semi-control deck. This deck wants to control you till it hits its 8 resources, and then what it wants to do is just ambush you. So this old one had some additions where we added in some timely interventions to be able to have a smuggle card that would be able to do some damage. We added in the scanning officer because it killed smuggle cards, which was permanent in last set, as well as provided another official for our Emperor's Royal Guard, which are the stars of the whole deck because they get the extra health because of Palp. No matter what, it's always an extra health. That's why they're so good. And then we kind of added in a little bit with the scrum, or not, salacious crumbs, to be able to help with being able to move around some different things, with the ability to, bounce it, tap something, and also to get the double heal from the Colonel Yularen, which is just, it's so good to be able to heal, play Colonel Yularen, play Salacious Crumb in the same turn and heal 3 is really, really a good feel. Now, here's kind of the updated list that we are starting to work on. We went down 1 Salacious Crumb. We found 3 was a little too much. We had way too many of them. We've added in some couriers to be helpful with token generation, some poggles. Grenade Strike is kind of one of the bigger ones too that I've added in as a way to give me a little bit more removal if we have some token decks. One of the keys here is if we see token decks on the rise, this deck doesn't have to feel super bad into some of them because of the ability that we have where they can't kill all of our Sentinel units. A Clone Trooper is not going to take out a Phase 3 Dark Trooper in one swing. It's got to have some sort of a buff on it to force it to be able to do some of those things. And if we're playing against a control deck, we don't worry as much about putting our Sentinel units out. We're worrying a little bit more about ramp. Now, if you watch my Kira deck tech video, you'll know that usually I run about 4 to 5 ramp in every style of control deck. This deck, in an effort to keep it lower to the ground, in an effort to give us the ability to aggressively kill things off of the ground, I have taken all of the ramp out but the super laser techs. Those are still a must. Those have the ability to be played. They can swing into something. You can pelt them. There's a whole bunch of weird things that you can do with them that are really, really good. That extra card draw with Palp and these are so good. I've also added in some Dookus and some Mauls as a way to kind of balance out some of the top end, but we'll get to those in a few minutes. So this right here is my list currently that I've been playing around with. So our overall strategy doesn't really change. This deck still wants to do almost the exact same things. With set 3, we're going to see extra token units coming on the board, probably a few more units, which might scare us a little bit. But essentially, our idea is to control the board, exploit units to be able to pick up extra cards. And then what we need to do is we need to stop them from being able to overwhelm our board. That's essentially what it is. So that's what we have is we have Sentinels. We are going to stall for our time, and then we're going to drop our big bombs in the end. That's what Pelp does. And Pelp gets to steal something when he comes out. So that's kind of the big thing is like even against an aggro deck, they have to be a little bit worried about what they're ambushing in. I can tell you a lot of times where a Sabine will have me at 20 health, they'll drop a wrecker, do the 5 damage, do an ambush. I will play a card to ramp and then flip and then steal their wrecker before you can do any more damage to me. And then now I've got a wrecker on my side of the board. Against control decks, you're able to fend off and steal their bigger units. Being able to take a crate dragon from them without having to play a card is like okay, super great. We used to be able to play like a V-wing, draw a card, Pelp that, and steal the crate dragon. Pelp just has so many tools in it, and this deck is so toolboxy in the aspect of it doesn't need to be just straight control, and it doesn't need to be like a tempo deck. It could be whatever it needs to be when you're playing against the other decks. So what have we added? We've added B1 attack platform droids. It's a 5/2. It was our card that we got to spoil, and it's a 5/2, man. Like it's a 5/2. I could drop this turn 3. You have to kill it, or it's gonna take something else out. It takes something else out anyway. It acts as a pseudo sentinel for things. Count Dooku. Count Dooku is amazing. You can exploit, and I'll get to what I've done here in a few minutes. But you can exploit things and then be able to turn around and do all sorts of crazy extra damage with it, because he basically says whatever you exploit, you then can do it. So for example, I can use Poggle, and I could play, let's say, the battle one B1 platform droid or the courier. I can then tap Poggle down, grab my other droid, kill off the Confederate courier. It creates another droid token. I can then play Dooku for 4 less. Super great. And now I still got 2 resources to spare if I'm at 8, right? I can play it on 6. It's just such a good card. Dooku is, and then what Dooku does is it says, okay, well, these all have 2 power, 1 power, 1 power, 1 power. You can then add those up and destroy something else. So it's like its own Palpatine, but it can come out earlier. It's so good, and it's a force unit. It's so good to be able to include in the deck. Grenade Strike is a newer ad. I'm not sold on this yet. I do believe that this is a possibility for a cut in the future, but for currently right now, like I really like this card. I think it's really good inside of this deck, because what it does is I could do 2 damage to something, 1 damage to another thing, and now I've got 2 options on what I can steal. I could also kill off some of your earlier threats. Like, so for example, if you decide to kill Poggle, you have 1 damage on your unit. I now can do 2 damage to it and end your unit's life. So it's a lot better of a card than I originally gave it credit for. And in the early version of what we've seen in the meta, it seems to probably do pretty well against pretty much either arena, no matter where you look at it. Poggle was another ad. Poggle is also kind of a verge of cutting. Like, I really like Poggle. He is an official, so he really enhances. He's kind of what we replace Scanning Officer with currently, and we did that on purpose because we feel that smuggle cards will be a little less prominent. If they're not, we're adding that back in. But for now, with it being a little less prominent, Poggle allows you to create droids that you can just use to kill things, or allows you to be able to exploit for Dooku, or allows you to be able to essentially bring out extra units, and then gives Pelp fodder to draw cards. Maul, another consideration that we added into the deck. Maul is a 5 cost, 5/6. He does damage to 2 different units. He's really good. He's something that, in my opinion, is worth like discussing. It might, in the long run, be a card that we don't need. But in a 5 spot, being able to have a 5/6 that can hit 2 units is really good. And so, for example, if you have 2 clone troopers out there, I can kill 2 clone troopers with him and not have to actually worry about losing my Maul. So he's also a spot where you could play him, and then the next turn you're able to play like an overwhelming barrage, and now you're doing 7. It's super good for that, and he's just, for a legendary, he's a 5 cost, and he just comes out swinging. A Confederate Courier was the other card that we kind of put in there. V-Wing, we used to put V-Wing in there, pop it, draw a card, you get 2 cards off of it essentially for 3 resources. This one allows me to play this for 2. I could pop it. I'm going to also get a droid that I could pop the next turn and get 2 cards out of it for now 2 costs. This one actually is I think this becomes a little bit better. It gives us another space unit, so we can go into some of the earlier space units if we need to. I can use this to trade up. I can use this to attack a space unit, put the 2 damage on it. It creates the clone droid, clone droid token, and then I can help the clone droid token to do 3 damage essentially to a space unit. This became really good because of that. If we didn't get the token like creation out of it, it's not as good. But being it like, are they going to kill your one droid? You know what? Whatever. If they really want to kill it, it saves you damage on base. So even if you can't pop something to kill their other space unit, you have that. That's again why Poggle is so good as well, because if they don't kill Poggle, Poggle can generate tokens for you to basically. So now we used to sacrifice our own units, and now we don't have to sacrifice them as much in this deck. All right, here are some secondary considerations for things that could possibly be better than we currently have, or what I would consider possible inclusions. Private manufacturing. We are creating clone tokens. It does give us 2 other cards, but do we need the extra cards? I don't know. Again, if we're going to play a lot of pillage decks, then private manufacturing is like a staple in this deck, and I've included this in the sideboard for that reason, because I do have some token creation in the deck. It gives me the ability to have a ability to draw extra cards without killing or sacrificing units all the time. And even if I do sacrifice unit to get that 3rd card with it, it just seems pretty good. So private manufacturing is just it's what I would consider a bubble card right now. If we're gonna run into a big pillage force throw meta, this comes in. This becomes a main staple as well. I don't like playing it to draw 2 cards, but it does let you tutor some of your deck and different things like that. So it has a place, I think. I don't know if it's going to be something on a main deck. Clone is another consideration. In our deck, like that's 7-8 cost slot is so tight. I don't know if clone's worth it. If we see Luke's becoming real prevalent and Dooku being able to exploit out some higher cost units, clone could just be a way to counter some of that. And you don't get always the cool stuff with it, but you get to copy their card. It's again, clone I was very high on originally. I'm now kind of on the fence about clone, and I think we'll have to see kind of how it plays out, because sometimes it's just better to control their board than it is to play clone. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like that 7 cost slot is a Vader. Do I want to play a Vader to draw a 2nd card, to be able to play a 2nd unit, or do I want to be able to play clone and kind of mimic what they have? So I have it as a sideboard option right now just because of that. Self-destruct. This could go in over Grenade Strike. You are creating token generations, and then it's a 2 cost 4 damage to a unit. I don't know. Some of me thinks that's really good. Some of me doesn't like it. I think this is a bubble card. We're going to have to see what they have. If people are playing a lot more higher health stuff that is early game with lots of damage output, we're going to have to switch to this. Because like make an opening is great. We have that. Grenade Strike was kind of what I put in there to deal with token units and to technically help us get help onto the board to be able to deal with some, to be able to steal something. This might just become a necessity to help it. I will say, right away this is active turn 3, just like open fire. It doesn't care what arena it is in, and all you have to do is defeat a unit. So it's kind of hard to not want this. I think we're just gonna have to see, are people gonna go wide, or are people gonna go like bigger, heavier? Hence that's why it's kind of a consideration. Droid deployment is a low consideration for me. It is something that I've talked about a little bit with Alex. I don't know 100% if I like paying 2 to bring these battle droids out, but I can tell you what, like at turn 1, I could play those 2, and then the next turn I have fodder for self-destruct, for private manufacturing. I have, a fodder as well for the pure fact of being able to draw an extra card. So it's what I would call, I don't think it's going to make the cut. I don't think I need to meld that many battle droids. I only have 1 card that really has exploit on there, but it is a possibility, and there is a chance I could go back to this and like relook at other red exploit cards that might be as beneficial as Dooku is. We'll see though. Battle droid escort, that's even lower of a consideration, but essentially it's 3 units for the cost of 3. I got a 1/1. I pay 3 for. I get to get a battle droid, and then I also get to get one when he dies. It's just more token creation. I think it's just overkill. I'd almost just rather play droid deployment for 2, but we'll see if I need a little bit more tokens. And then Huang is, I love this card. We were really high on this card, but I feel that like it makes him a little bit of a target, but he does buff our sentinels. And we do got, 6 sentinels that can come out. He is also a 3-drop, so he can be there, and then you can just exploit him and be done with him. Like, he's worthless outside of the fact that you need him to buff the sentinels, and then they have to kill the sentinels. And so he can be a good card that I would consider. Obviously, still highly impactful cards. Super Laser Tech, don't want to get rid of that. Need a little bit of ramp no matter what. It's also another exploit token that we can do that gives, basically, we spend 1 resource, kill it, get that resource back. And we get to draw a card and do a damage to the opponent. And it's still pretty good. Emperor's Royal Guard, that would never be cut. The whole deck lives and dies on that card. That card is the best card in the world. And that's partially why we talk about Huang being considered, because if I could get Huang off with this, it's really good. The issue is Huang's not an official, so it doesn't like turn on. If Huang was official, we would just run him then. Like, it would not even be a question. He's a 3-drop official, and he would affect our Emperor's Royal Guard great. But for now, Emperor's Royal Guard, because they have a conditional sentinel, we have to be very careful. Palpatine, I can't cut Palpatine. I just can't do it. I'm gonna run a Palp deck. Got to run my boy Palp. Overwhelming Barrage, same thing. Like in token creation deck, we're gonna need this. This is a great tool. Same with Vader. People talk about running Mauls instead of Vaders. I really wanted to run more of the 7-drop Maul, but Vader in this deck, just allowing you to pull out a Sentinel, being able to pull out something that you can use to exploit. It's just really, really good. And we have enough of the lower cost drops. We don't want to not play him, I don't think. And then Devastator, as always. There's a discussion about moving Devastator around, moving some of these other cards around to be able to put a Crate Dragon in instead, because Crate Dragons were very impactful for this deck as well. But Devastator is just like a win more card against control decks. It allows me to control their board and get a big unit out. And if I'm playing against like a mid-range or an aggro deck, and I get to the point where I can drop a Devastator, I can't almost ever lose the game. So Devastator, I just don't think we can get rid of Devastator at this current time. So if we go back to the deck, this is kind of, again, the overall deck. We've got 2 of the Salacious Crumbs, 3 Ularans, 3 Force Choke, 3 of the Couriers, 2 Poggles, 2 Grenade Strikes, 3 of the Emperor's Royal Guards, 3 Making Openings, or I'm sorry, 3 Open Fires, 3 of the Dark Phase Troopers, 3 Super Laser Techs, 3 of the Black Sun Enforcers, 2 of the B1s, 3 of the Overwhelming Barrage, 2 Traitorous, 2 Maul, 3 of the Ruthless Raiders, 3 Vader, 2 Palp, 3 Dooku, and 2 of the Devastators. In my sideboard, currently, I have 2 of the Crate Dragons, 2 of the, specifically 2 of the Fang Fighters, 2 of Private Manufacturing, 2 Palp's Return, 2 Clone, and 2 Relentless. Now, let's talk a little bit about the side deck real quick, and then we kind of move on. We already talked about Clone. Clone's a possible bubble card. It could possibly be good. I currently have it in there right now because I want to test it out and see if it's good. Same with that Private Manufacturing. Be able to draw extra cards without killing our units is really good. Fang Fighters is in there to strip away if people have, it's like a confiscate, essentially. There is a discussion. We may have to run Power Failure if we start seeing more Voltron-style turret decks or Maul decks. We may have to do something a little bit different and to add power in there. It's a sideboard card. Relentless is in there for control matchups. Same with Crate Dragon. Now, Crate Dragon could come in the main board. There is a discussion about that as a possibility. I have a little bit more lower end stuff. I also have Traitoresses in there. Traitoresses could be swapped out to main deck Crate Dragons. But Traitorous is just such a good card when we're trying to steal something to be able to slow them down. So earlier I talked a little bit about a tricky play with Dooku. So for example, if you have a Ruthless Raider out, you could swing with that. When it comes out, it does 2 damage to the base and 2 damage to things. You can Palp that and get a card. And we used to do that. We used to do that quite a bit. Now you can exploit it. So instead of the card draw, you can use it as an exploit tool to be able to swing and then do 2 extra damage and 2 more to their base. And Dooku doesn't care. It's the same thing. So now not only do I have the Pelp ability, I now have the ability with Dooku to be able to get another unit to trade. So if that's on the board and you have 6 resources, you could bring Dooku out and just Pelp that. Or not Pelp it, but just Dooku it with your exploit, and you can now all of a sudden you could do all this extra damage, plus you still have 6 resources to play something else. It's super, super good. But being able to bring Dooku out early and then do all that damage. Now, the best part about it is Dooku says when played, you get to take the cost of the defeated units and add them up. So you can do your when defeated after you do your when played. So you have a when defeated on your Ruthless later. You can use Dooku first to do a bunch of damage, and then turn around and do 2 more damage to the same unit or to any other unit. It's so good. Like the ability, Dooku's ability to say here's 4 damage plus the 2 from the Ruthless Raider. And if you want to exploit more things on top of that, you now can do that as well. You can play Dooku for free if you have a board. If you have a bunch of droid tokens and Ruthless Raider on the board, you can play Dooku for free if you want. It's really, really dirty. And I won't say that I've played a Ruthless Raider, done 2 damage to something, 2 damage to their base, had 2 other droids, and then was able to exploit 2 of those and turn around and flip Pelp and steal whatever I did damage to in one turn with the 8 resources and wipe their board, essentially. It was so dirty. So there's so many weird plays that can go on with this. I think that's a really good discussion point, and I kind of want to see where it goes. If we start tanking down the tokens, then we don't need Dooku as much. Dooku doesn't have the ambush ability, right? But he does get overwhelmed, which is really good for in-game. Same with like where your Pelp is. He's great for, overwhelming barrage, targets. So there's some things here that we can play around with that I still think he's valuable for, but he is a slot that you could pull him out and put something else in that slot if you don't want to run all the token units. All right. So what now? I've given you a deck. We've talked about this deck before. My favorite deck of all times. Can this deck fend off the aggro scourge? That's one of the big questions. Are we now competitive into aggro? Because we don't have to tech for the Boba Fett's. Not that we were really teching for mid-range, because we usually did really well into mid-range, but now we definitely don't have to even worry about that style of mid-range. We don't have to worry about pillage as much or force throw as much because we don't care as much about our units on the ground, A, and B, we are able to draw cards. So if you could completely keep cards out of my hand, I guess we'll play that game until I have a better end game than you do. And that's where like clones come in and different other things where I could just say, okay, well, I could Pelp's return a unit and bring it back. Dooku's another force unit that comes out, with Pelp's return for 6. So there's a lot of niche things that go on, but can we deal with aggro? That's the big thing. Can the new cards give us an edge against, our enemies? I think they give us an edge into control. I think this deck gets even better against mid-range decks. And I think that we now have a few tools for being able to deal with aggro a little bit better. And I say this because I have a B1 platform droid that's a 5, the 3 cost and does 5 damage. And yeah, against a control deck, who cares? No, you don't play that. They'll just kill it. But against like an aggro deck, I could play that and be able to swing in for 5 damage the next turn. Is really good. I could play it on if I have 4 resources, and then the turn after that I could play overwhelming barrage, and now I'm doing 7. So they either have to take it out or they have to deal with it. And so that's the problem is we have a few lower end tools that now can kind of come in. It's going to let us draw more cards. It's going to let us hit harder to be able to take our opponents down. And so now I think the question is will you test the deck with me? Will you play the deck? Will you give, feedback to us either here on YouTube, send us an email at plentyphasesyndicate@gmail.com, or you could join our Discord if you want and give us feedback in the Discord. I love Pelp. I love Pelp Aggression, one of my favorite decks. I hope you love it as much as I do. Thank you all so much for joining us on another Deck Tech adventure. This is our updated Set 3 Pelp Red Deck Tech. This is the first pass I got. This is where I feel comfortable with. We'll kind of see in testing what comes out and where we can go from here. And is this deck going to become viable? Does Pelp finally get his chance in the sun as an aggression deck? We'll see. Thank you all. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us right here on YouTube. Have a good night, and we'll see you on the flippity flop.